So in this video, we're going to be looking at list comprehension with Python. And before we actually get started with the first example, which is strings, let's walk through kind of roughly how this is going to work. So let's go down here and just make a nonsense variable. And then now what we need to know is that list comprehension is going to return, well, a list to us. But you could do a lot of cool logic on the inside to prevent you from, well, maybe writing 20 lines of code. So what's going to happen is you're going to start off by having an expression. And this we could think of as essentially the thing that you're going to return. The expression could be a lot of things, but for right now, and at least the early examples, it's going to be like a letter or something. It's going to be very obvious. Later on, I'm going to show how you could use functions. But once you have this expression established, you could go through and you're going to loop. And so the next section is you could have a, where you're going to have a for loop. So it's going to be an item. So, whatever index it may be of the actual list itself. And this will go and work for any iterable that you have. So strings are iterables, right? So if something is an error and it's not an iterable, right? Just be aware of what you're using in here. But then after that, you could do stuff like, I could spell if condition is true. So you could say return something. And every time we go through it, the first index, second index of the iterable, I only want this value coming back if a certain condition is met. This is roughly what list comprehension is going to look like as we go through it. And so now that you kind of see the form, let's go ahead and go through and look at an example using strings. So I'm going to make a variable called list right here. And then I'm going to have, let's just say, character. What is character? Well, for character in subscribe. And if you haven't already subscribed to my channel, do that now. I love doing this stuff, and let me know what kind of tutorials y'all want to see in the future. So we have this. So this is the expression, which is the character. And if we're taking that logic of like, what is a character? We can see here in this for loop here, for character in. And so this is, like I said, going to be the first index, second index. So this is going to go through and look at S, and then it's going to look at U, then B, then S, then C, all the way up to the exclamation point here at the end. And so what it's going to do is give us a list of each of these letters. So let's go ahead and run this. We can see down here that in fact, we do have subscribe below. And so it's this entire string broken up. But we could do more things than just that. We could do other actions if we wanted to. So we could actually come in here and do dot upper if we wanted to. And so this is going to uppercase everything. So if it's already uppercase, it's not a big deal. But we could come in and do this. Scroll down, and you can see it's all capitalized here. So that is a way that you could use strings in your list comprehensions to, break apart a word, or as you break apart a word, maybe perform, something like upper or lower or whatever else you want to it. The second example we're going to look at is nested arrays. So sometimes, and I say arrays, sometimes lists, there's probably, the technical differences. So if I say one or the other, just know I'm talking about the same thing. But say you want to return a list, but you want to return a list of lists. What does that look like in case you need to do that? So let's go ahead and make our variable. We're going to have our open and closing brackets, per normal. And then this is our expression. So it may look kind of weird here for a second. So let me write the rest of this out and then backtrack and explain it. So what we have here is the expression. And like the previous example, that was just character, right? But this is telling you here that there's a list coming back, and it's for j in j range 3. So it's 0 to 3 excluding the value of 3 here. And then we have another loop here that is essentially the same thing. So what's going to happen is for every time 0, 1, 2, every instance of the loop that runs through that, I'm going to be getting a nested array that contains a list here of 0, 1, 2. So let's go ahead and print this off. Remember, every time it runs through this, it's going to give back an array. And it's going to be the same looking array to y'all. So let's come down here. We see we have 0, 1, 2, 0, 1, 2, and then 0, 1, 2. So like I said, for each time it goes through this, we inside of the larger array down here are going to get a nested array of these values. And this is kind of a boring, small kind of example here. But if you ever have to go through larger chunks of data and break them up, categorize them for whatever reason, this is a way that you could potentially do that in one line of code, which is pretty cool. In this example here, what we're going to look at is using conditionals. Now, in the form expression, the very beginning, I showed you that you could have an if statement at the end here. So let's go ahead and do a quick example to show you in kind of an easy way how to use conditionals in list comprehension here. So let's say I want all even numbers. How do I do that? So I'm going to make my variable here, open and close bracket, and then I'm going to say x. So I want to return whatever x is at that given point, as x is going from 0 to 19. But then I could come in here and say if x, when it's getting evaluated, you know, there's no remainder of 0, meaning it's an even number. I could come into here, have even numbers there. So once again, we're going to return whatever x is. So say it's the first time going through, it's going to, you know, be 0. And then the next time it's going to be 1, 2, 3. And then it's going to ask the question, hey, you know, is there a remainder for this thing after I divide it? So let's go ahead and run this and see what we get. And we see we get 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18. So we're getting the even numbers coming back, which is, I think, pretty cool, right? This is all in one line here, looping through, and then we can conditionally ask, you know, these questions at the end. But it doesn't stop there. We could actually ask another question. We could do another conditional. And what does that look like? Well, you could just go and tack on another if statement. So we could say if x, then also when you divide by 3, leaves you with like no remainder. And so I'm just going to keep this even numbers here just for the sake of it, just, you know, so we have them here. So I'm going to come through. And so we can see right here that the list is considerably shorter, but it first asks, you know, is it divisible by 2 and even? And then it asks right after that, is it divisible, you know, by 3 and, you know, doesn't have a remainder either. So that's pretty cool that you could continually tack on the if statements here. Now, I wouldn't recommend getting possibly too insanely wild, right? Because at the very end, we're going to be able to see how to use functions. So you're not going to want to, you know, load these up too hard, but this is a nice, cheap, and easy way to, like I said, do a loop with some conditionals and save yourself, you know, 10 or 15 lines of code. So in this one, what we're going to do is we're actually going to look at having a conditional in the actual expression itself. Previously, as we go through an arrange or looping through something, we could evaluate each letter, number, whatever it is, as it, you know, moves across the list. But we could also return conditionally, change the data, what it looks like coming back. So let's do an even odd list. So what does this look like? So let's say we want to return even if, and let's just do the numbers thing again. Is it even or not? So if, let's just do if I is even, else. So it looks like I have a minor syntax issue right here. Let me look at it. Oh, here we go. I forgot that. All right, cool. So as it goes through here from 0 up to 7, it's going to return even if it's, well, even, right? Otherwise, it's going to return odd. So rather than put it on the right side of this expression here, we now have it on the left side to kind of change, like right before we get, you know, our string back. What kind of string are we getting, right? So let's come down here and print this out. We see even, odd, even, odd, even, odd as it goes through, which I think is pretty cool, right? Now we have the power to not only evaluate I conditionally when it gets to a certain point, but as we have the data coming out to us, we can now conditionally change what stuff comes back, right? And I think that is really cool as well. So there may be times that you have a array that's got arrays in them. It could be maybe a jagged array, some kind of matrix, whatever it could be. Sometimes you want to go through and you want to maybe reshape, reform the data. Now there's a lot of libraries for this, maybe other intelligent ways of doing this, but I still think it's necessary to go through and show you how to go through nested looping using list comprehension. So let's say I have this matrix right here. It's always weird when I'm typing these out because it's like it's a lot of the same thing, just open and close brackets and then a lot of commas essentially. So we have 3 arrays or 3 lists in here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So what if I wanted to come through and, you know, like break them up, say, into 2 nested lists inside of a bigger list? So let's go into, let's just call this transposed. We're going to come in. And remember, we're returning a list inside of a list. So we're still kind of roughly keeping the form above. We're just kind of changing how things are grouped together. So we could come in here and do this. Row I for row in matrix, for I in range 2. So let's go ahead and print out the transposed, because I think that visually will make sense as I discuss it. And you see right here we have 1, 3, 5, 2, 4, 6. So 1, 3, 5, 2, 4, 6. So what happens? This is 0, right? This is 0 and 1 because it excludes the 2. So 0, as I go through, I'm now getting a list back. And as I go through the matrix, I'm getting the first row, which is 0. So this is the 0th index. This is the 0th index. This is the 0th index. And then adds that to the list. And the second time, this is 1. So then 2, 4, and then 6 is the, you know, first index of this list up here. And if I was to have like, you know, in range 5 or 6, it would throw an error here. But this is a way to have a matrix, something like this, and then reformat the data down below to just kind of massage it differently. And this is the last example. We're going to be looking at functions, how to use functions inside of list comprehension. And for all the conditional stuff that we've seen previously or the different logic you could add in here, this is a nice way of just separating a lot of that out. So let's go ahead here and make a function. So we have a function up here, multiply times 2. It's going to take our expression, so whatever the value is of the index that's coming on through, and we're just, you know, doubling it right here. So let's make a number list. Let's go up to 5. We're going to get our result. And then all we have to do is multiply times 2 value for value in our number list right here. We're going to go ahead and print the result out. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10. So what it's going to start off with here first is the value. And so that's going to be 1. And then 1's going to be injected into here. It's going to fall through into here and, multiply it times 2 and then stick it right in here. And then the same with 2, 3, 4, and then 5. And you can see the doubling, and that's how it works. So these are just a few ways that you could work with list comprehension. It's a very handy tool. And if you like what I'm doing, like, share, subscribe, and I'll see y'all in the next video.